Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hi, I'm Tanushree Banerjee, co-head of research at Equitymaster. One of the first things visitors to few cities in southern China notice is the quiet. The cities do not have the incessant noise of throbbing engines and clashing gears that serve as the backdrop to daily life in most metropolises around the globe. The reason? Nearly 40% of the cars that ply on the roads of these cities are electric. In 2020, nearly half of the world's plug-in electric car production and 90% of the heavy-duty electric vehicle production was in China. The number of EVs sold in China have grown 5 times in the past 5 years, and the numbers are multiplying by the day. Of the 850 odd automobile manufacturers in China, more than 50% of them churn out electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids. In 2020 alone, the country added new production capacity of around 5 million units. And that number was about 4 times the actual number of EVs sold in China that year. Now, I'm sure this makes China's EV industry seem super exciting to investors. Even Warren Buffett, for that matter, has invested in Chinese EV maker BYD. But there's another side to the story, something that the Chinese media refuses to divulge. China's electric vehicle juggernaut is backed by lavish government subsidies, something that has brought in huge investments in the EV space over the past decade. But can you guess which was the best-selling electric vehicle in China last year? It was Tesla's Model 3. The runner-up was a low-tech, low-priced microcar produced by a General Motors joint venture. So despite the subsidies lavished on Chinese electric vehicle companies, China's indigenous EV makers have struggled to catch up. And that's not the end of it. As per estimates, nearly half of the capacity that China has already set up for EVs is likely to stay unused for a long time to come. So, like the ghost cities, China now sports deserted EV factories. The Chinese EV makers have raised billions of dollars to rival the sales numbers of Tesla. But apart from few like BYD, scores more have fallen by the wayside, unable to raise the huge capital needed to make electric automobiles at scale. The Chinese government is also contemplating setting production limits for the EV sector. It is unable to greenlight new projects until the current capacities get utilized. Resources are also being channeled to few select EV makers. But the biggest problem of it all is that China's EV makers do not have the technology or the battery technology to rival American EV makers like Tesla. Also, cornering global supplies of minerals like lithium for batteries has created new environmental problems for China. So, China's big mistake while making a huge splash in global EV production has been the lack of sustainability. Neither the technology, nor the input supplies, nor the massive capacity additions are sustainable. And this is where India comes in. Of course, India is still at a nascent stage of EV penetration. The penetration in two-wheelers, three-wheelers and buses are likely to reach 25 to 50% in the next decade. But what stands out is the level of innovation in India's EV battery space. Batteries are in fact the real game changer. Lithium-ion batteries account for 35 to 40% of the cost of an electric vehicle, and lithium cells constitute 70% of the battery cost. India has few exploitable options to produce lithium, the key metal for the current generation of EV batteries. But we must pay attention to the jungles in East India that hold large reserves of bauxite, the ore used to make aluminium. India is among the top 10 bauxite producers globally. It has some 600 million tons of the ore in proven reserves, according to the US Geological Survey. India's mining ministry estimates that the untapped reserves may be many times that amount. Moreover, India has invested heavily in the production of aluminium over the years to become the world's second biggest smelter of aluminium. Rechargeable aluminium-based batteries offer the possibility of low cost and low flammability. An aluminium air battery could win hands down over its lithium-ion rival in 3 crucial ways. It is potentially cheaper, vehicles using it would have a longer range, and it is safer. More importantly, they could be recyclable. The lithium-ion batteries often contain hazardous materials, making them harder to recycle. By 2035, the world will have accumulated about 4 million tons of lithium ion batteries that have reached the end of their lives. So, despite being a late entrant in the EV battery innovation space, India has unique advantages in the battery production. India's battery makers can develop technologies that are more suitable, sustainable, and cost effective for the domestic players. And becoming a global supply chain hub of EV batteries can help India's EV sector immensely, especially since India has huge advantage in using aluminum batteries. As I say this, a Bengaluru based startup specializing in nanotechnology has developed its own brand of aluminum fuel cells. These cells offer 5 times the range that an average lithium ion battery can offer. The battery's cost is 30% cheaper. It is easier to use and does not require the hassle of constantly recharging it. Startups like these can enjoy massive gains no matter which EV producer in India manages to take on Tesla and Chinese rivals. Investing in electric vehicles by scrolling the stock quotes of largest EV producers may be fraught with risks. So, EV battery stocks are amongst the few backdoor opportunities. But amongst them and other companies in the EV ecosystem, how do we evaluate the best stocks? Check out in my next video. Our new research uncovers some shocking truths behind today's hottest investment opportunity, electric vehicles. Don't invest your money in EV stocks before seeing our research. Click here to sign up for our special event to know it all for free.